welcome back to Bad Movie Month Week 2. And this week actually was not as bad as last week.
Are you sure about that?
So we are just gonna get right into it. I started out this week with another Sandler Sunday, this time with The Ridiculous Six. The Ridiculous Six is what you would call the quintessential awful Adam Sandler film. It has everything wrong with Adam Sandler comedies. It has the gross out humor that doesn't land, it has the boring performances, it has a bloated runtime of nearly 2 hours. This movie is just a nothing movie. That being said, there is one bit in this whole film that is genuinely funny when John Turturro shows up as the man who created baseball, and he's just playing the game with the Ridiculous Six, and he's just inventing rules along the way so that he wins.
Okay, that's 2 past you, so you're done, right?
No, I said 3 times.
No, you said 2.
I said 3. 3 strikes, and I'm out.
That bit is genuinely funny, but everything else I'm going to say about this movie is awful.
Strike 3, you're out! Oh, no, the ball was too low. In order for it to count as a strike, it has to pass through the strike zone.
The plot is just this weird mashup of classic spaghetti westerns and Adam Sandler comedies. It's a mashup that doesn't work at all. It has a lot of characters, but none of them are interesting. Terry Crews is in the movie, and I normally love Terry Crews and everything that he does, but he is weirdly awful here, delivering some of the most cringe lines in the whole film.
So that technically makes me half black.
Nick Nolte shows up, I think. I don't know, it's kind of hard to remember, but he's also pretty bad in the movie, and this has a very large cast. Rob Schneider's doing brownface again, Luke Wilson's in here. It's a bad movie all around. It's not even an interesting bad movie, there's not really much else to say, and there's a pretty miserable viewing experience, except for that one scene with John Turturro. Overall, I was feeling a pretty strong 1 out of 5 on this one. I don't think it's possible for Adam Sandler comedies to get worse than this.
Are you sure about that?
Up next, the random number generator actually picked a little bit of a reprieve film. This is not a good film, but it's a nice change of pace from what I've been watching last week, and that was I Love You, Beth Cooper. Now, this is a film that's actually directed by Chris Columbus himself, the man behind Mrs. Doubtfire and Harry Potter, so I don't know what he was doing to get stuck doing this movie. But this is your pretty generic average 2009, yeah, pretty average 2000s teen comedy. Now, if you were 12 years old and told me that this was your favorite movie ever, I would completely believe you, because it has everything that a 12-year-old could want. It has jokes that 12-year-olds will find very funny. It has a breakneck pace that is not really boring. It has a traditionally attractive 18-year-old in the leading role. Kind of plays up the fantasy of high school that we all thought we were going to get when we were in high school but never did. And the nerdy guy gets the girl in the end. It has everything a 12-year-old could want. But for the rest of us, it's just a pretty generic 2000s teen comedy. It also has a very disjointed plot. Like, characters will just kind of show up and do a thing and then disappear for the rest of the runtime. This is kind of like if a John Hughes movie was written by ChatGPT and made for 12-year-olds. So while it's not awful, it's still pretty generic and just kind of whatever. So I was feeling a pretty light to decent 2 out of 5 on this one. And we can just go ahead and move right on to the next movie, which is actually the worst film I have ever seen in my entire life. And that is for Terrible Tuesday. I watched Uwe Boll's Alone in the Dark. Now, calling this a movie is very generous, because it's not really a movie as much as it is a collection of moving pictures. So you know how movies have things like a plot, and characters, and scenes, some sort of narrative action, a climax? Well, this movie doesn't have any of that. It has people walking around in dark corridors, being scared of the dark, and then it just cuts to a new scene because this movie made the inexplicable decision to make all of the monsters invisible, probably because the CGI is really bad when they do show up. So yeah, this movie doesn't really have things like a plot or a narrative. They just kind of wander around and discuss a mystery that was already explicitly told to the audience in the opening 30 seconds. Like, the whole point of this film is they're trying to figure out what happened to these orphans 20 years ago, but in the opening crawl of the movie, it tells you explicitly what happened to the orphans 20 years ago. So this whole movie is spent with these characters who don't know what happened, but we know what happened, and it just makes for an excruciatingly boring and insane movie viewing experience that doesn't offer anything whatsoever. There is no plot, there are no characters, there is no pacing. It is just an awful film, and there are some action scenes in this movie, but they're not even action. They are straight up seizure simulations, because they have rapid cuts with bright flashing lights that last about half a second each, and it is actually headache-inducing. I'm so glad there's only a couple of them in the movie, because if there was more, I would not have been able to finish this film. That is how bad the action scenes are. This is the first time I have ever skipped the half a star and gone straight to a 0 out of 5. This is an unredeemable movie that should never be viewed by anybody ever. There is no fun bad to be seen here. It is just an unwatchable bore. So yeah, 0 out of 5. It broke the scale. Thankfully, we did bounce back with yet another somewhat enjoyable movie. Not good, but watchable. This time, the random number generator selected The Big Wedding, and I actually have a little bit of lore with this movie. I remember when it came out, there was a poster for it at the mall, and I loved Robin Williams as a kid because my dad loved Robin Williams, and I saw Robin Williams in the poster at the mall, and I was like, Mom, I want to go watch The Big Wedding, and she said, no. I'm very glad she said no, because this is not a very good movie. It's not the worst movie. In fact, it's actually not even that bad. But it's just a very generic wedding comedy with a bunch of plot lines that don't really make a ton of sense. So the whole plot of the movie is Diane Keaton and Robert De Niro play this divorced couple whose adopted son is getting married. Their adopted son's biological mother believes that divorce is a sin. So he doesn't want his biological mother to know that his adopted parents are divorced. And so they have to pretend to be together so that they have a happy wedding. But that plot never really comes into play for more than 1 or 2 scenes. This is just a very unfocused, generic comedy. But it's not unwatchable because Robert De Niro is delivering a pretty fun performance, Diane Keaton is trying her best, and Robin Williams, for the 3 or 4 scenes he's in, is pretty good. A movie that's very disjointed and forgettable, but it's really not that bad. I was feeling a pretty decent to strong 2 out of 5 on this one. If you watched this, it wouldn't be the worst thing you've ever seen, but it's not really a movie I would recommend. We are bouncing back into the trenches with a movie that I have never heard of, and I guarantee nobody watching this video has ever heard of, The Alien Girl. This is a Russian crime thriller that is so forgettable. It is very difficult for me to even talk about this movie because nothing really happens. This group of Russian thugs goes to, I think, the Czech Republic to get a girl who was being trafficked, and then the girl and one of the thugs kill the other thugs, and then they go back to Russia and kill the boss. This is over the course of 90 minutes, by the way, and it is so unbelievably drawn out that nothing in this movie really happens or works. It has multiple unnecessarily explicit scenes that don't add anything to the plot, and I don't know. This was by far the biggest endurance test thus far. This isn't the worst film in the world because it is competently shot. The cinematography is solid, even though the script is excruciatingly boring. The performances are giving it their all. So it's a very boring film to talk about because I can't really talk about the plot very much because I don't remember it. But I do remember it being very boring, but somewhat competently made. So I was feeling a pretty light 1.5 out of 5 on this one. And here we have our second installment of Friend Fridays, which was actually the Friend Friday movie I was the most excited to watch, Dragon Wars D-War. In all definitions of the word good. This movie does not meet any of it. But this is probably the most fun movie I've watched for this whole challenge. This is a kaiju movie with really bad CGI, but it is extremely fun to make fun of with your friends. The whole opening 20 minutes of this movie is a flashback within a flashback establishing the most insanely complicated lore for this movie, and none of it makes sense. It's all convoluted, but it is also really funny. The last 30 minutes of this film are just one giant kaiju fight with the military until the main characters are teleported into Mordor, where Mega Rayquaza shows up and fights a giant lizard, and that's the end of the movie, and then the characters are just stuck in Mordor forever. This is an insane movie. It is absolutely awful in every sense of the word objectively, but I had a really good time watching it, so I was feeling a pretty light 1 out of 5 on the rating scale, but with a really big heart next to it because I had so much fun watching this movie. And that brings us to the last movie of week 2, with yet another film that was enjoyably trashy. This time it was Tyler Perry's Acrimony. Now this movie is a special one. It follows a woman recounting her whole life story with her ex-husband, explaining why he wronged her so much to the point where she feels justified to harass, stalk, and potentially maybe hurt him. But instead of getting us on her side, all this movie does is it makes us realize that her ex-husband is just a genuinely well-meaning dude who just made a couple of big mistakes. He cheated on her once at the beginning of the relationship, but they were married for 20 years after that, and he never did it again. I'm not excusing cheating, but if she was with him for 20 years after the first incident and he never did it again, I feel like he probably learned his lesson. So her ex-husband is this inventor, right? And he has this battery that he's trying to get to this investor, but the investor won't see him. So his wife is working 2 jobs while he's working on this battery, and she mortgages the house, all to finance this project and to pay the bills while she's working 2 jobs, and he's got nothing. But eventually, the wife has had enough, she divorces him, and then only after she divorces him does he actually get noticed by this investor, and he makes hundreds of millions of dollars, to which he then goes and pays his ex-wife $10 million and the deed to her mother's house, which she lost in the mortgage, trying to fund her husband's project. So he has paid her $10 million and given her a house, and she feels like she is owed half of his hundreds of millions of dollars fortune. And so she goes on an insane spree where she is harassing him and his new wife, and then she tries to kill them at the end of the movie. And this is just, it's an insane movie made by an insane person that it tries to make you feel like her fury is justified, but he gave her $10 million. I don't understand this film. The only way that this movie accomplishes its goal is if its goal wasn't to bring the audience onto her side, and its goal was to just show a woman with BPD go crazy and try to kill her husband. If that was this movie's goal, it succeeded. Now, obviously this is a bad film, but it is enjoyably trashy, because it's like a car wreck you just can't look away from. The movie is very competently well made because Tyler Perry is a good director. He is very experienced, he knows how to make a film look and sound good. The acting is also solid, but the script and plot is so terrible, but so enjoyably trashy, that it brings everything else down, but also elevates the entertainment value. So, this is a bad movie, don't get me wrong, but I had a great time watching it, so I was feeling a pretty strong 2 out of 5 on this one. That's week 2 of Bad Movie Month. This week's movies, even though it had the lowest lows of the challenge yet, it did have a lot more 2 out of 5s, which, you know, 2 out of 5 is still a bad rating, but it's like competent and watchable bad, not like truly awful. This week, overall, was not nearly as bad as the last week was, but it did have the lowest lows yet. Hey, this is Reggie while editing. Turns out the data says that week 2 was about 14% worse than week 1, average rating wise. But I feel like the reason I was much more positive on week 2 was because the lower lows of the 2 1s and the 0 were more spaced out, and it had the higher highs of the 3 2 out of 5s, hence making week 2 seem more manageable. Not that anybody cares about what the data says, but I care. This part is for me. Shut up. I guess we'll see where week 3 goes. I'll see you guys next week.